Halle Berry is back, and this time she's also behind the camera as director. Bruised is now on Netflix, so should it be on your watch list? Bruised is the story of a mixed martial arts fighter who leaves the sport in disgrace. Down on her luck and simmering with rage and regret years after the fight, she's coaxed into a brutal underground fight by her manager and boyfriend, which grabs the attention of a fight league promoter who promises a life back in the octagon. So we've seen Halle Berry kick butt on screen, and I'm not talking about years and years ago. I mean, she was recently in John Wick 3, and she certainly could hold her own. In Bruised, she's playing Jackie Justice, an MMA fighter who's bit down on her luck and not really fighting anymore. Her life and living situation is pretty depressing and very dysfunctional. But one night, through happenstance, she gets noticed by a fight promoter who wants to get her back in the cage. So first I'm going to focus on Halle as the character Jackie. I liked her in this. I mean, she is off-putting, rough around the edges, and all kinds of messed up, but she's also got a great heart and does become somebody that we root for. And there are many situations where she is very sympathetic, and it's easy to be drawn to her. I love that through the course of this, the story is doing its best to point towards a redemption arc for Jackie. When we meet her, she's pretty close to the bottom, so to give the character hope and the ability to succeed can be a very engaging theme. Jackie is surrounded by varying levels of good people. I mean, her boyfriend is trash, and the way he's portrayed by the actor Aiden Canto makes it super easy to hate him. Jackie's mom is played by Adrienne Lennox, and she's not the most likable either. But there are some moments where I saw some warmth pop through, showing that the character may be hardened, but she's not totally detached. Sheila Item plays Jackie's trainer Bobby, and I loved her performance. She's strong and fierce, and then incredibly soft and warm too. She's a great character who can challenge Jackie at all the right times, and then be the shoulder that she cries on as well. Finally, there's Danny Boyd Jr. playing Jackie's estranged son. Now, this kid is super emotive, and he just made my heart melt every time that he was on screen. He doesn't speak much in the role, but his eyes, his mannerisms, and his body language more than make up for any lack of dialogue. So I think the characters are mostly effective. The majority of the movie isn't. I mean, the camera work up until the final fight is kind of a mess. And most of the time, the camera is just way too close to the subjects, so we can never get a good focus or a handle on scenes and situations. And the story itself is kind of jumbled or clunky, and there are many portions that are repetitive. Now, I know we need to see Jackie train and train and train because that's part of the gig. She's getting ready for a fight, and if we only see her in the gym once or twice, that's going to feel very unearned. So at least when Jackie steps into the octagon for the final sequence, it does feel legitimate that she belongs there and might be able to hold her own physically. When I talk about the clunkiness, it feels choppy, where we bounce around from scene to scene where many don't feel like they flow into each other. Now, that's not the case for all of them because there are some sequences that transition very well, but on the whole, it just feels like we're on the verge of whiplash from how the scenes change. The pacing is also a little difficult in this also, where sometimes the story is progressing efficiently and then other times it just begins to drag. And unfortunately in those moments, you can really feel the time. And I did feel the time more than once during that 2-hour and 9-minute runtime. Within this story, and I really do think it's more of an issue of the writing than anything else, it takes a while for us to get an understanding of some of the tumultuous character dynamics. I don't mind a little bit of intrigue, but some key moments of dialogue and understanding came way more towards the end of the story when they could have fit in better earlier. And while we can get an understanding of some of the players, for the most part, they are all strangers with very little development given. So I know I said that the camera work in this wasn't great, and I do stand by that, but I've also got to give credit to Berry for the final fight sequence. I mean, this was wickedly intense and shot really, really well. I was squirming in my seat as the characters were battling it out. Now, some of that was because of the intensity, but then a large portion was because it felt like I was right there in the octagon with them. As the camera swung around the fighters, the shots were framed well, with a good amount of distance so that we could see everything, but then not so far away where we were taken out of the action. And I love this last sequence because it was epic and it was emotional, and it reminded me in ways of that other spectacular MMA-centered movie called Warrior. This final scene is almost 30 minutes with the build-up and then the battle, and this was truly the best part of the film. So overall, Bruce is an interesting look at a redemption story for a broken character. Halle Berry is charismatic and sympathetic, and also shows that she can give and take a beating. I enjoyed her character, as well as some of the other portrayals, but unfortunately the clunkiness of the storytelling and the less than desirable camera work for the majority of this keeps me from loving the movie as a whole. The pace works against itself, making this more of a chore to take in than I would have hoped. And as much as I loved the final fight sequence, with its drama, intrigue, and the cinematography, it's not enough to save the rest of the film. I am looking forward to what Barry can do next as a director, though. There's sex, nudity, a ton of profanity, and even more violence. I give Bruised 2.5 out of 5 couches. What's a movie or show that you're looking forward to checking out? Let me know what it is in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.